Okay, good morning. So we're up to Siman Reish Nun Gimel. We're halfway through Sif Hay. Yesterday we discussed about putting food on top of kelim ala eish, on top of the lids, or putting food on an urn, or putting food on a hot plate. All these unusual ways of cooking. And since it's derech bishul b'kach, if it's already cooked, we said that the Mechaber said it's okay. That was yesterday. What we're discussing today is going to be is asking a non-Jewish person to do these sort of things. So we're halfway through Sif Hay. In my edition, it's 2 lines from the bottom. V'chol ha-dvarim she'asa. Yeah, halfway through the second last line. V'chol ha-dvarim she'asa lasos midvarim elu. All of the things that you cannot do on Shabbos, also lo le'eni Yehudi lasos. You can't ask a non-Jewish person to do it. Lochein, also lo le'eni Yehudi lahochem ha-kadeira im nitztanin. You can't ask a non-Jewish person to warm up a kadeira if it has cooled down. V'im also kain, and if a person did it, also la'achla afilu tzeinim. You can't eat from it even if it is now cold. Okay, let's do the Mishnah Berurah on that. Tzadi Dalet. It says Mishnah Berurah, v'chol advarim. Hainu afilu dvarim she'ein bohem rak. It's a drabonin. Even if the whole issue is only a drabonin, you can't ask a non-Jewish person to do it. For example, lahachim kadeira, afilim lo yitna al gabi eisha hakir mamish. Even if the guy doesn't put it literally on the flame or on the oven, deshuv ein b'zeh mishum isa chazara, and therefore there is non isa chazara. Afal pichein also mishum isa bishul kimishin itzlan negamre, because if it's cooled down and you're now asking him to put it back on, that is a problem of bishul. Kamesha kasu simin shinuches sif dalet sif tesvov bahaga ein shom. Umikal mokum kasu amogen avrom v'shachrenim. בדיעבד יש להטה התבשל באופן זה שלא העמידו עלו אש ממש כי אם על התנור. They do allow to ask a non-Jewish person to do it if you're not putting it directly on the fire, but rather on the oven. Mi'achad yesh poskim shematirin afilu Yisrael la'asosei lechatchila, because there are poskim who say that even Yisrael can do that. Kamei shekos Hashem b'sif tesvov b'haga. Okay, sif koten tzadivov afilu b'tzoynein. After in other words, you can't eat it even if it's cold. So that means even though you're not benefiting from what the non-Jewish person did, mikol makom konsuhu, they put a penalty on this person who asked the guy to heat it up. That he's got to wait until Motzei Shabbos b'chtei sheyaseh, the time it took to heat up. Because at the end of the day, this non-Jewish person did the melacha through your instruction. What if he chose to do it himself? Then you can eat it cold, because you're not benefiting at all. You didn't want it, you didn't ask it. If he went and did it, he can't asser it on you. However, if Yisrael was observing all of this, then tzarech limches biyadei, i.e. tell him not to heat it up. Okay, let's go back to the Ramah, top line. Omnam. Imlon itztanen kol kach. If, however, it hasn't cooled down so much, she'adayin ru'uyin le'echol, that it's still warm, it's still edible, im chimamu oisa enim Yehudim mutar nechol. And then if the non-Jewish person heated it up, then it would be okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah, let's do it on that, Tzadi Zayin, she'adayin ru'im le'echol. V'lochein. Af al gav she'nehne, now he changes it here to hachimum. You have benefited from the warming up. Shari b'di'eved, kivin she'yochel le'echol b'loi hachimum again, because you could have eaten it even without him doing it, and therefore we're not so strict in a situation where you could have eaten it without his efforts. Even if the guy put it on the eish mamish, but tzivuyo with your instruction, we don't answer it. Mutarin le'echol tzadiches v'afilu chimum en Yehudi tavshel ubaso b'yachad. Even if he heats up this dish, meat and other things together, and the rest of the food wasn't edible because it was too cold. We don't answer the baso because the meat you could have had even if it was cold. Okay, now we're now back to the Ramah. Now we're going to talk about the good old days of the ovens and taking the chulant to the central stove and things like that. Noagim she'enam Yehudim moitzina kaderis min hatanurim shemat minin bohen Therefore, the minhag is the non-Jewish people take the kadeiros, the pots, from the ovens, shematminin bohen, that they were insulated in, and they put these pots on the heaters, like the boilers. And then, sometime later, the non-Jewish person puts the the heater on to heat up the house, not to cook, just to heat the house. And through that, because they're close to the boiler, then your children's going to get hot. So we allow the goy to do it, but not the Yisrael to do it. Okay, so let's do the Mishnah Berurah on that. Lochei nagin sadites adle el koi uperushai. You can't tell the non-Jewish person to warm up this pot. The minhag is that a non-Jewish person can take the dish that is cooled down totally. They take it from the oven before it was fired up. There's no problem with that because there's no fire in the oven. And then later the oven gets hot. The only reason why they heated it up is to warm the house, and that's allowed. Because we've said before that everyone is considered a choyle in regards to the cold, and therefore in the cold Polish winter to tell the guy to heat up the house would be okay. Or because of a safe siman reisha involved. You're not telling them to warm up the pot, the dish. If you're telling them to put the boiler on to heat up the house, then inevitably it's a psik reisha that the children's going to get hot because of the proximity to the boiler. Since telling a non-Jewish person to do that is itself a drabanon, the less by maisa, because there's no action involved in the malach itself. We allow even that for a psik reisha. So it's very interesting. What is the story with a psik reisha and a goy on Shabbos? If you take a look at 122, he gives a little bit of summary. He says, so we're allowing a psik reisha over here, right? So it says the footnote 122, Uche'ein zeh hitil lekamon in Shin Lamed Zayin, lo melanochri lechabed bayis she'ena merutzov. You tell a non-Jewish person to sweep the house. Now, in those days, think of the earthenware floors. You're going to involve isurim. You're going to level the floors, which is a problem of meshave gumos. We allow it because it's a psik reisha, because we're not telling them to meshave gumos. We're telling them to sweep the floor, right? It's a bit similar to telling the non-Jewish person to wash up. And even though they may choose to use hot water and a sponge and things like that, which involves this melachas, but they could do it in a way which is mutter, i.e. with cold water and other forms of cleaning, and therefore, if inevitably they're going to do it in their way, that's not your problem. And he gives another example. Ulam, that's the example of Mesham Gumas as well. Ulam le'el le'inyan natila kadeira shemunachim sviva gechalim. We had this recently, where you take away the dish which is insulated and it's sort of wrapped it's sort of firmly entrenched in the coals. Shel psik reisha sheyaver sagechalim hatachtonis, and it's inevitable if he takes out the whole pot which is covered by coals, he's going to be involved in havara v'yechaber es halyonis, and he's going to extinguish the upper coals. Hevi machleikas in mutzalas zeh. So how come? So if we say psik reisha for a guy's mutzah, how come over there we were strict? And the distinction is this: if it's a psik reisha I don't care if some of the coals go out, yeah, or I'm sorry, if meshave gumas in your earthenware floor, then I'm not particularly bothered if your earth floor is meshave gumas, not meshave gumas. So then I'm okay. If it's a psik reisha nichele, then I can tell the person, the goy, to do it, even though inevitably that malach is going to happen. If it's lo nichele, that's what is machriya. Okay, v'da. In other words, I don't care when the non-Jewish person washes up if hot water was used or cold water was used. I just want my clean dishes. So that's why it would be okay. All right, let's go back to the Mishnah Berurah. V'da. So I'm halfway through Tzadites. Yeah, v'da. The kol zeh be'evilach. Okay, so he says in the footnote, what is that? This is some sort of old-fashioned boiler. Tanur gadol ma'oid habona bebinyan miyad lechim ma'bayis is designated to heat up the house. V'yesh toich le'esh v'le'etzim. There's like a compartment where you put the fuel in. V'toich lemala me'oesh b'toich hakir, and there's another level above it. Things like that. Okay. Shebetanu beis ha'chorev shalanu she'ein derech levasha b'chol memala l'gabetanu. That's like a boiler house, a heating house. You don't cook in it. So therefore you can say that since this is not used for cooking, therefore I'm allowed to tell the non-Jewish person to put the pot nearby, and then he'll warm up the house later, and then inevitably the pot's going to get warm. English kuchen, right? English ovens, right? I don't know exactly. It's probably more akin to the ovens that we have. He defines it in three. I mean, tanu chimum engli. Okay, whatever they are. Shederech hakol levashel b'chol agabein milmalo. Where people do cook, then it's different. Then it's a gomel yesh bezeh lahamit hamaychel lechamim al de'en Yehudi afilu kedem hasoka. So then it's going to be also to tell the non-Jewish person to put the food there. The vada kavanas because that is used as a form of cooking, so therefore it's a different story. The vada kavanas in Yehudi ba'hesek achakach gam b'shvil bishla kaderis, because obviously he's not only going to be heating the house, he's going to be cooking the food as well. That's the sefer Tuf Tam Vodas me'agon marshak b'simun kuvayin hey v'chein kol b'shal shuvas b'shleim chelek aleph simun nun hey v'chein kol b'shal shuvas shel l'meishiv ma'adur gimel chelek gimel simun gimel shecholil lasas kein v'ayim be'halacha. So it depends very much on the type of oven, and really it boils down to whether this is a normal form of cooking or not. That's really what it boils down to. Okay. Kuf. Sorry, have we done this yet? Yes, we have. So we said that to tell a non-Jewish person to do that in those types of ovens, in those types of boilers would be okay, but not alidei Yisrael. Alidei Yisrael we said is also b'chiyah gavna. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Kotzon Kuf also b'chiyah gavna rotzolema lahoishiv hakadeiros etzel tanur beis hachorev. That means for Yisrael to put the pots near a winter house, an oven in like a base chorev, a winter house oven, ayalav afilu kedem hesek, even before it's heated up, that would be a problem for Yisrael to do it. Because it's like one person is firing it up and one guy's putting the kedera on. The Darishan pot aval also, because the Gemara says that the first person maybe not chayiv deraisa, but it's a drabanon. And therefore we can't do it. Masha'enkein ba'mir le'en Yehudi d'shar masha'enkein, to do that drabanon through a Yehudi, which itself is only a shvus, then that would be okay. Because ultimately their primary focus is to warm up the house. If the Ein Yehudi puts in water into the pot, which is hakavua b'tanur v'nischam, and it warmed up, it's clearly dirty water, but you could use that water to wash the dishes. Therefore, even lechatchila you can tell him to do that. The kal v'chaymehu. Why? Putting the food there next to the boiler is okay. You just, we'd worry that if you haven't got any liquid in the kedera, then it might burst, it might platz, and therefore certainly it's going to be okay where the intention is not for cooking purposes. For Efsha, possibly, says the Mishnah Berurah, even if you put the water in after it's already heated, the oven is already on, shari gamkein mitam zeh, maybe that could also be allowed. And mikol makom. However, to actually instruct the guy to put it on after the oven is already switched on, or it's working, that would if we should ask for that. But Yisrael can never put water in the kedera, even before the guy heats it up. So long as it's not very dirty with fats and with oil. It's a bit what we spoke about yesterday, that it could warm up the fats, and that could create a new entity of liquid fats, and therefore that's a separate problem of noilat. Don't pour it onto it directly to create this new thing, because that's noilat, a problem of noilat. If you do it indirectly, that's going to be okay. All right. Which is, by the way, one of the if you're an ice, there are two types of people in the world: those who like whiskey and those who like ice in their whiskey. So if it's having or any cold drink, you should put the liquid first and then put the ice in afterwards, because to leave the ice, that's a chumrah, but you shouldn't leave it be your dying. That's what we're saying over here. But you shouldn't leave, if you're doing it indirectly, that's going to be okay. But to pour it and to create the new nolad, that's a problem. Okay, we'll leave ice for another time. Kuf Aleph. Let's just finish off the Ramah. But if the kaderis are still warm, then mutala midin etzal tanur. You can put them next to the tanur, but beis chayrif, the winter house. Because ultimately our ovens have got a din of a kira, or smicha b'kira she'ena grufa ketuma kadin grufa v'ketuma le'inyan nesina aleha. Now what does that mean? Let's do the Mishnah Berurah on that. Kuf Dalet. Afilu ein hayat zeledus boy. You can to put it on an oven even if it's not yat zeledus boy. Mutal hamidon. Afilu yisrael afilu lachash husuk. You're allowed to put it there. Etzel tanur beis hachoref. Aval olav. You can put it next to it, but not on top of it, and certainly not v'cholshkem b'soiche also. Kivin she'ena gar v'kotam. V'afilu kaidem husuk also litin olav. And even before it's ignited, you can't put the pot on top of it. Mishum chashash shem yechata achkach b'gecholim lahar b'schumay, because of the chashash of shem yechata. V'hashakder shel memala yunirsochim, because the pots on top of this oven will get very hot. The oilam, however, are makel, and they put the pots on top before the oven is lit. But once the oven is on, then you shouldn't do it. Some sort of heka that we've spoken about. Okay, kuf daled kedin grufuk rotzolema. If it's gar for kotzim, that's what the Ramah means. That so too we can be seimech a pot near the kira for tanurim shalonu in these types of ovens, even if it's not gar for kotzim. Okay, let's just finish off. Says the Ramah, we've already said that we can be makel regarding putting kalim back on Shabbos, even if b'diavad you put it on the karka in between after you took it off. And so too, to put a pot near an oven which is not gar for kotum, since your kadera is still warm and umavushal kotarkai. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah Kufhei ukva nisboya hu inyan bifnei atzmai. This is a separate point. V'rotzalema ki heichi del inyan chazara al gabi grufa nisba el demuta. We said previously that you're allowed to do chazara afilu nichal al gabi karka mikaydim, even if you did put it down on the ground in between, it's not fatal. Hu adin inyan lachza v'lismech etzal tanur she'enu garf she'hanizkan el, to put this dish near an oven which is not gar for kotum, even if in the interim you put it down on the floor, that doesn't mess it up. It doesn't make a nisin l'chatchila, and therefore you would be able to put the pot near this oven. Okay, so times have changed a little bit in terms of how we cook, but the principles certainly remain the same. So that is the end of Reishon and Gimel, a long and an important sif. Simon.